I want to save the middle class. You know, the middle class, the hedge funds guys didn't build this country. These are guys that shift paper around and they get lucky.
We will cut taxes for all working and middle class households in America. I will never stop fighting for you against the Washington establishment.
Welcome back to Harley. He certainly talked a good game, and nothing says you're fighting for the little guy, of course, than another big tax cut for the rich. And that's exactly what the president's up to right now. According to the New York Times, the Trump administration wants to bypass Congress and cut capital gains taxes, a move that would disproportionately benefit the country's highest earners. It would amount to a $100 billion tax cut, according to some estimates. The Washington Post reports that Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin has not determined if the move is even legal, however. Last year, Trump signed a $1.5 trillion tax cut. I've called it the Trump Tower tax cuts because, as Politico noted, it has made corporate executives even richer while yielding fewer long-term benefits for the working people. Philip Bump writes in the Washington Post that the president is engaged in a two-pronged political strategy. The rich get richer, the poor get distracted. He writes that President Trump is a blue-collar guy who lives in a gold-plated penthouse. He's the embodiment of the political pitch he makes, obsessed with cultural issues as the policies he passes benefit his enormous wealth. Neither his wealthy nor his poor supporters seem to care about the inherent tension in that duality any more than Trump does. For more, I'm joined by Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today. Now, Susan, I've looked at the latest numbers, and to people who are progressives or people on the left or center left, they're going to be really unhappy at hearing this. But 89% of Republicans think Trump is helping the working people out there, the regular income people. And 89% think he's helping the rich. And it doesn't seem to bother them. Now, that's fine, except that Trump talked like the regular guy. He talked about how the people that build these little businesses and then the equity boys come in and shop them and move the money around. They don't do anything. It's the guy in the garage who builds up the company. He or she should be making the money. He talked right. He said just the right stuff. The worker bees should get the money. And now he is now talking about giving a ton of money, another $100 billion, to people that are sitting on stock coupons.
You know, it's really the distribution of the benefit, if he does make this change in how capital gains are taxed, is really extraordinary. 2/3 of the benefits would go to people who are in the top 1/10 of 1% of our country. It's for people who make more than $7 million a year in income. You know, only 3%.
And who are living off stock.
And well, are living off. You can live off stock if you're making if you have that kind of money. The benefits overwhelmingly go to the.
So
top
why would the person out there who's Republican, and let's face it, the Republican Party is not just millionaires and billionaires. There are not that many in this country. The regular person in Erie or Scranton who's making a modest income, if that, who's retired, why would they root for Trump to do stuff like this?
Well, the economic theory is that this would free up some money to have investments that would benefit the little guy. But that is not what economists predict would happen if you did this. What they predict would happen would exacerbate what we see already happening, which is the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. It's a long-term trend. It's not just a Trump trend. It started about 1980 in a serious way, but it would continue that trend and fuel it in a new way.
You know what I've discovered? There are a lot of Republican businessmen out there. They're not, I'm into, who are not what we would consider normally, if you looked at them, bad people. But they don't care what a horse's ass Trump performs in the way he does, so often acts, the way he talks, the language he uses, the bullying, the stuff they would never let their kids do, never do themselves. They'll put up with all that embarrassment, moral embarrassment, so they get a tax cut and they get relief on regulation. That's what they really want. And they're willing to just sit by it and watch this guy humiliate us in this world, make these ridiculous foreign policy decisions, make ridiculous comments about people, mock people, bully them, as long as they get their piece of money. And that's a pretty sharp indictment. Some people, friends of mine, have said they're the criminals because they want the gravy from this guy. They don't even bother defending him in society. They just want the stuff he's giving them.
Well, you know, congressional Republicans have made a similar bargain. Congressional Republicans generally don't challenge President Trump because he's delivering on some of the policies they care most about, like tax cuts or nominations for the Supreme Court. So that is kind of what the reasoning is. But I talked to some Republicans on the Hill today about this proposal on the capital gains tax cut, and they say this is a bad political move for them in the midterms, that it gives Democrats a big tool to use to talk about how President Trump is not delivering for working voters, including and kind of exacerbating the problems that have been raised by the tariffs, by the trade war. That
a little too greedy, huh?
Well, for people like soybean farmers in Kansas, where my cousin has a soybean farm in Kansas. He's incredibly worried about this trade war with China. Or automobile manufacturers. These are people who could get open to Democratic appeals in the midterms, or maybe just get discouraged and stay home.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.